The Lumberjacks of Northern Arizona, Jerome Sauer, 6-5 last year, 14 returning starters. Top 4 receivers return, but they lose their quarterback and their lead rusher, Deontay Williams.
Well, injuries and inconsistency was what plagued the Lumberjacks last season. The running back, Alex Henderson, is explosive, but he is injury prone. If he can stay healthy, this is a dynamite player. He's a little shorter guy, but he's shifty. He can make people miss, but he has to stay on the field. You look at the offensive line, they have some holes that they have to correct before the season start. And the quarterback, Michael Herrick, has to improve. But the wide receivers are the strength of that offense out there in Flagstaff. You look at Ed Berry, Kurt Sweeney, Conrad Meadows. All those guys are real dependable guys, show up every Saturday, catch the balls with their hands, get open. They just have to find some consistency at quarterback, and running back has to stay healthy.
On defense, they lose first-team All-Big Sky performer defensive tackle Steve Nwagbe, but they replace him with JUCO transfer Gary Rogers.
Well, this is a theme of the Big Sky Conference. The run defense, again, in Northern Arizona is awesome. 2.1 yards a carry. They gave up 60 yards rushing per game. That's phenomenal. But you look at the linebackers, that's the core of that team. The linebackers are real solid. All 3 stars return. Cody Dowd, Stephen Thomas are studs. Those guys can really play football. Those are 2 best linebackers, I think, might be in the conference. Secondary, lost a lot of playmakers, and it probably take a step back this season. But the D-line will be good again. They have to, maintain their health. So I think the D-line and linebackers are good. I'm worried about the back 4.
At Arizona, at Mississippi this year, tough road for the Lumberjacks in the FBS games. Portland State Vikings, Jerry Glanville, 4-7 last year, 14 returning starters. Air Force transfer Nick Green will battle Drew Hubel, who had 9 touchdown passes last year.
Well, one thing about Portland State is the fact that the biggest question they lost offensive coordinator Miles Davis, who's famous for the run and shoot offense that he ran in the USFL with the Houston Gamblers, helped orchestrate with that offense down there in the Houston Oilers as well too, and the Atlanta Falcons. So you look at Miles Davis being gone. Jerry Glanville, though, is a defensive coach, so his defense is going to be all right. But offensively, the wide receivers, they're very explosive. You look at Aaron Woods, 1,000 yards, 15 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, and had a kickoff return, for a touchdown. You also look at Mario D'Ambrosio, 900 yards, 9 touchdowns. This guy, 76 receptions, catches everything that is thrown his way. The offensive line, though, is still a work in progress, so they have to get that straightened up or they won't have success. And fullback/tailback Bobby McClintock is back. He's healthy this year. Look for that running game to help bring along quarterback Drew Hubble.
The Oilers and Falcons are famed for that run and shoot offense. Didn't work in the NFL. They're trying to bring it to the FCS ranks. Defensive side of the ball, Oregon State transfer defensive end Carl Sommer anchors the D-line, and defensive back Deshaun Sheed led the conference with 6 interceptions.
Yeah, defense might be hit or miss this year. I'm really disappointed that Jerry Glanville is supposed to be a defensive guy. That defense has to pick up 32 points a game on offense. Giving up a game 4.5 yards a carry, giving up. So that defense has to improve. Eric Peterson, though, and Ryan Peterson combined 148 tackles, 5.5 sacks. So those are 2 good players on defense, especially the cornerback Deshaun Sheed. 6 interceptions, like you said, 7 pass breakups. So he does get his hands on a lot of passes. They just have to improve overall as a cohesive unit.
Marshall Spurbeck leads the Sacramento State Hornets, 6-6 last year, 13 returning starters. Quarterback Jason Smith is in tow, and Brian Hilliard, their leading rusher, is back, and they bring in JUCO transfer also to play running back Kenslow Smith.
One thing that's going to help out Sacramento State is that veteran offensive line. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of depth and a lot of leadership on that offensive line. So that's going to help Brian Hilliard increase his yards per carry and increase his yards. He had 1,100 yards last season, 12 TDs. I like him as a player. Good quarterback in Jason Smith, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's really efficient with the football. He doesn't make too many mistakes, so I like the fact that he's coming back. So they have a good base on offense. The wide receivers, though, will be a little bit inexperienced. You have Chase Detter is not going to be the starter. He has to step up and be productive. But you look across the board, they have a really decent offensive line and a really decent offense. They just have to get consistency out the wide receiver play.
They also had 2 JUCOs to replace their lead wide receiver, Tony Washington. Defensive side of the ball, they need to replace a linebacker, Cyrus Muliatalo, their leading tackler. They're going to add 5 JUCOs on that side of the ball. Deontay Gordon, their cornerback, had 4 interceptions leading the team.
Well, they have a real good secondary in Sacramento State. You look at free safety Peter Buck, 84 tackles, 2 interceptions. This guy is always around the football. Deontay Gordon, 7 pass breakups, 4 interceptions. So the back four is going to be fine. I like the secondary. The run defense last year was pretty good, 3.2 yards a carry, 97 yards a game. They gave up, but they lose a lot of talent at linebacker. They lost a lot of guys, so that's going to be a big question mark. How can they replace that talent they lost at linebacker? The defensive line is solid. You look at defensive end Zach Nash, who had 3.5 sacks last season, pretty impressive, and defensive tackle Christian Clark, 5 sacks. Anytime a defensive tackle can get in the backfield like that, he's a dynamite player. He's going to be a dominant player again for Sacramento State. I like the defensive line.
Let's talk about 2 of the weaker teams in the Big Sky Conference. Start out with the Idaho State Bengals. John Zamberlin, 4-19 in his 2 years there. Good thing he's returning 14 starters. Clint Nickram, the running back, is back, and he needs to carry that offense.
Oh, he does. Last year was atrocious, 2.9 yards a carry, 88 yards per game rushing for the Idaho State Bengals. They have to improve that drastically in order to be competitive in this division. You also look at the O-line, is a pretty good group led by guard Mitch Rutter. He's a good player. You know, he's a leader on that offensive line, so they get that luxury of having him come back. You also have wide receivers. You know, they have to get some Jaron Taylor. You know, he had 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. You also look at Isaiah Burrell, another guy, 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. So they have some decent wide receivers. There's some guys that can play. They just have to get the quarterback. Russell Hill has to cut down his interceptions, though. Although he is accurate with the football, but the interceptions, the turnovers will kill you every time.
A positive note on the defensive side of the ball, as top returning tackler is back, linebacker Philip Arias.
Yeah, Philip Arias is a guy, 64 tackles, 2 sacks. Problem I have with Idaho State, 41 points a game on defense. You're not going to beat anybody giving up 41 points a game. 6 yards a carry. Opposing quarterbacks completed 61% of their passes. That defense overall has to improve. Kept them out a lot of games last season, and that defensive line will probably struggle again this season.
The Northern Colorado Bears, Scott Dowling, 1-10 last year in his first season. 10 returning starters. Brian Wagner, their quarterback, has some experience.
Well, Brian Wagner is another good guy, 14 touchdowns, but he also threw 15 interceptions. That has to improve in order for those guys to be successful on offense. You look at Tyron Wilson, 400 yards rushing. He has to get that up. Overall, you know, these guys last year had too many turnovers. They can't keep shooting themselves in the foot and expect to be competitive in the tough Big Sky Conference. And I like the receivers. They're pretty good guys. Alex Thompson, 500 yards, 3 touchdowns. And you also look at Brandon Smith, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. So if they can get consistency at the quarterback position and they can get more production out the running game and cut down on the turnovers, I think they might be fine on offense.
Cut down on the turnovers is key. Defensive side of the ball, cornerback Quincy Wolford is a guy to watch on their defense.
Yeah, 6 pass breakups, 3 interceptions. He's a guy that gets his hands on a lot of passes. I like Quincy Wolford. Linebacker Logan Zabel, 3.5 tackles for loss. So he gets his way in the backfield a lot. He makes a lot of plays. But overall, that defense has to improve. 29 points a game. 61% completion percentage on that secondary. They have to get better. Defensive end, the D-line has some depth, but defensive end John Eddy is a really good player.